All right. Hello, professor and class. Welcome to part 2 of my final project report submission. And this one, I will be going over parts 2, 3, and 4 of the final report. And I am going to use a Word document for this. So, in part 2 of the final project, we are tasked with finding the top 5 states where the company in question has the most number of customers, and the top 10 zip code areas where the company gets the best sale amounts or has the highest sale figures. I will admit that I did have a little bit of trouble because I got caught up with one error in particular that I will highlight when we get there, but it is in my explanation. So in summary, the identifying of the path of code that the project needed was fairly easy because it was a summary of everything that we learned. But I think it's a testament to double checking errors within the schema and the queries, because one misplaced character will lead to a lot of frustration and inaccuracies, which is why in my previous part I recommended that, and if I didn't, I recommend now, that the organizers on the ground use Hive for their individual calculations of holistic data profiles and finding patterns, because it is a more reliable system despite it taking a bit more time to do the calculations. But we will come back to that at part 4. So what happened, the steps that were taken to find the outputs that were needed was that the data needed to be uploaded to the bucket of the cloud platform first and foremost. That would be part of the storage unit, or would be the storage unit for the data in this project. Then the data needed to be uploaded to the Apache Hadoop ecosystem in a new folder where it could then be used by Hive. Once uploaded to the ecosystem, the command line with Beehive was used to enter the Hive user space, and then schema were written to create tables for the data so that Hive could use the data to analyze it, so that Hive could analyze the data. At which point, which is where my fatal error occurred, or my near fatal error occurred. But once the error was found, and once all steps were repeated, which I will identify, and the schema to create the table for defined columns was completed, a table was created. The queries were written that identify the necessary column data needed to calculate the answers to the problems. And so, going through the project, so this is my first round of calculations. I used WhoAmI to define the user using it. I used PWD to get more descriptive data, and there's screenshots that will be shown. This command was done previously to create the data folder, and then I made a directory for sales record, and then I used this command to show the folders or the subfolders that were within the data folder. This command, the gsutil, was used to put the sales record data within the actual ecosystem. So it's just floating around in there, and I used this command to put it into the sales record subfolder. And then here is the beeline command to enter the Hive user space. This is the first schema I used. I ended up using the wrong string here, but I corrected that later. To create a table to show that it was in the system. And then I used show tables to confirm that. I used this select command here to make sure that it was the correct data, that all the data was showing up correctly. And this is where I ran into problems. I'm sorry, this is my correction first, but it's after this that I ran into problems. So I ended up creating a second table with the correct string, and then again used this to show that I had the correct data in there. And this is where I ran into problems. This is probably my second or third attempt with this. I ended up actually writing out all of the column names, albeit some incorrectly. Customer was summarized incorrectly, which should be customer ID and customer name. But if you'll notice, the error that I ran into, which caused me a lot of headaches and pain, was this comma right here. I kept getting the same error over and over again, and did not recognize that this was it until many hours later. And I didn't recognize it because I just ended up writing the same thing, which is my testament to one small error will just lead to the entire schema not working. But moving on, yeah, I have several other attempts here that are all incorrect. But I thought it fitting to leave it in just because, you know, we're going to make mistakes in these projects. But, you know, coming back from those mistakes is really important. And it shows that we're learning. I hope it shows that we're learning in, you know, becoming better data scientists. So here's my first screenshot of uploading the data to the bucket. And I'll actually zoom in here. These screenshots, I'll probably just leave it zoomed actually, just because it's better for the recording. But here's the first screenshot. Here is the second screenshot. Shows who I am, who am I. Shows the pathway. Shows me making the directory, went through. I use this to show what folders and subfolders I had here. And directories, I'm sorry. Here is me uploading the data. I think I did it incorrectly several times, actually. But on this one, got it uploaded. Scrolling down. And this is all my first attempt as well. Here is, I apologize. So here's where the data got entered. And here is where the data was put into the subfolder. Coming down, in later screenshots, I'll have everything kind of more clean. I have a lot of overlap with these, but once that was put into the subfolder, I entered the Hive user space. You can see it identified here. And I used my first schema to create sales record 1. Use show tables to show that it was created, just to be sure. In this screenshot, I used the select command to show the data. It was very helpful because I had to identify all these rows. Yeah. So here is now where I run into problems. This is my corrected sales record with the correct string at the end here. If you notice, this one has the incorrect string at the end. All right, so now we're in the second round of query and schema attempts that were successful. So I repeated all of this. Who am I? Pathway, making the directories. My second subfolder was sales record 2, and then used pretty much the same commands. I actually re-uploaded the data as a separate file to make sure that it was in there correctly, just because I was so frustrated in in that small error that I had. So it will now show up as sales record 2 underscore ADA 5240.csv. And I then put that into the new sales record 2. Entered the Hive user space again. I used another external table with a correct string. I just labeled it 2 to match up with the subfolder in the file. But this is table 3, just because 1 and 2 were taken in the correct space here. Show tables just to be sure. Did this just to be sure. And here is my second. This is again the corrected version of the first table that I used as well. So here's me re-uploading the data. Here is me, I'll zoom in again, correcting all of this. So now it's a little bit cleaner. So who am I pathway, making a directory, uploading the data, putting it in the folder, entering the Hive space, doing my first schema, made it a little bit cleaner here. You can see all the tables that I have. You can see the new query of select, I'm sorry, the new, select command with the correct string. Here's my first query. I made it a lot cleaner for this round with better column name identifiers. I ended up having to just create sales record 4 to keep with correct table names, all in sales record 2 for my location. You can see in, if I can zoom in this screenshot, you can see the incorrect one first. And this is the error that I was receiving many times, all because of that damn little comma. But entered it correctly. No rows affected. We were good. I'm sorry, that was a schema that I entered. Oh, I'm sorry. So sales record 4 actually had the incorrect customer. And so I corrected that again in sales record 5. Customer ID and customer name were added. This is the same thing. And so then here's my first query to show this table. I will zoom in. So here is so here I'm running it, I'm getting another error. But here I run it and I'm running the query, getting an error. I'm running the query on the new one and it goes through. You can see these are identified, but we'll come back to that. It took about 20 seconds. Here is my second query, and here is a very succinct screenshot of both results of the query. So with these 2 queries, the top 5 results were California, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Washington with these figure numbers, and the top 10 zip codes were as follows with these summed sales figures. Going to part 3, once everything was figured out in Hive, because they are so similar in their SQL commands, SQL and HQL, the same code was pretty much written. I reset my module, my virtual machine, and I went into Spark SQL. I actually full screened this screenshot so it was easier to view all at once. Here's where I enter Spark. Here's where I show my numerous tables, figuring this stuff out. As you can see, it takes a lot less time to have these show up because we're cutting for time. I will quickly show the same queries that were used in Spark and the same outputs were given. I am actually going to, I'm actually going to make a third video just to quickly summarize part 4. But thanks for sticking with me, and thanks so much for the feedback and the class.